Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video is another really big, some might say huge, unboxing book haul. We've reached that time of year where my pre-orders are coming in. This is such a good time period for releases. And two, I might just be more in the mindset to gift myself some books that have been on my to-buy list. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. The first set of books I'm of course going to show off are my selects for Book of the Month for the month of November, and I'm also working with them for this video. I love Book of the Month. Book of the Month is also an amazing gift for this holiday season for any book lover in your life or even yourself. But if you're not familiar, Book of the Month is an online bookish subscription service. Every single month they curate a book list from a variety of different authors and voices in the community, and they send them directly to your door. Always hardcover, always new releases, and at such great deals. They also very often have add-ons, and you're also able to access their entire backlist. So many books to choose from at such fantastic prices. And if you're not interested in any particular month, it's super easy to skip. I of course have an offer code. If you use my code Peruse Project, you're able to get your first box for only $9.99, and I will have that linked down below. But for the month of November, there were so many great options to pick from. So let's go ahead and chat about the ones that I grabbed. The first book I selected was actually a repeat author for me. I read this author's previous work through Book of the Month a few years ago, so when I saw they're coming out with a new book, I had to grab it, and that is The Wilder Woman by Ruth M. Lang. I really enjoy this author's writing. I feel like it's beautiful and lyrical, but very, very literary fiction leaning, but she often combines elements of fantasy or sort of unusual powers back with another story following ordinary people with extraordinary abilities. 5 years ago, Nora disappeared without a trace, leaving behind two daughters, the eldest of which is Zadie, who is psychic, and she feels like she should have saw this disappearance coming. And we also have Finn, who is Zadie's estranged younger sister who can't see into the future but has a fantastic memory. So good, in fact, that she's actually able to stumble upon other people's memories called echoes, kind of seeing glimpse into their past and into their lives. At the beginning of this book, Finn actually stumbles upon a very unique echo and realizes it's actually from their mother, Nora, bringing these two sisters back into each other's lives, and Finn convinces Zadie to basically go on a road trip following their mother's echoes in hopes of trying to locate her. This is a story, I believe, of two sisters kind of coming together, and also two daughters trying to understand why their mother left. I feel like this is going to be emotional. Again, I love that it kind of includes fantastical elements, but it really does feel like a very literary fiction leaning book. Loved this author's previous work, so I'm really looking forward to picking this one up. And then the second select I have just sounds unbelievably thrilling and a great winter read. That is White Horse by Erica T. Worth. And the tagline for this book is, "Some people are haunted in more ways than one." And in this story, we follow our main character, Carrie. Heavy metal, ripped jeans, Stephen King novels, and the occasional beer at the White Horse have defined Carrie's life for years. Her life is turned upside down when her cousin finds one of her mother's lost bracelets, and in finding this bracelet, it inadvertently calls upon her mother's ghost and a monstrous entity. Now, Carrie must confront the fact that running away not only from the paranormal, but also her past is no longer sustainable. Forced to kind of go on a journey of self-discovery, Carrie kind of begins to confront a lot of things happening within her own family, while also trying to grapple with, again, the paranormal. This seems like a really interesting combination of like self-discovery, self-healing with literal like fantastical dark paranormal elements. I really feel like this could be a really chilling novel, and I'm excited to check it out. And I also believe this is a debut. Alrighty guys, those are the two books I picked up from Book of the Month this month. Again, I'll have a link to their site for you to check out all the releases down below, as well as my offer code. But let's go ahead and dive into the rest of the books I've picked up recently. The first book I picked up shouldn't be too much of a surprise, and that is Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie. I recently wrapped up my read of the First Law trilogy this year and absolutely loved it. I really enjoyed his characters in his grim dark fantasy world, so I was really excited to check out the next series set in this grim dark world. I also opted for the UK covers because I just thought they're really, really beautiful. I actually love UK paperbacks for the aesthetics, not so much for the reading experience, but these were just too beautiful. I could not say no. This series, it seems we're introduced to a new cast of characters, all kind of working in a bloody profession. Specifically, we're following a very famous mercenary who I think has ties to some other characters in the First Law world, but I'm excited to find that out in more detail. She's basically hired to take down like a powerful political individual, and she works with a variety of characters to get this done. I love Joe Abercrombie's writing. I think he makes fantastic characters and great like plot build-up moments. So I'm really looking forward to checking this out. I feel like I'm going to love it, so I'm thrilled to add this to my shelf. Next up were two used bookstore purchases. I basically fell in love with the series and immediately went online to try to find a good deal for these hardcovers. These are so hard to open. One second. Ooh, I even opened them in the right order. I love it. Okay, so the first book I have here, Age of Myth by Michael J. Sullivan. I read this last month and fell in love. Like, I have a feeling this could be like a new all-time favorite fantasy series. That is like a big statement to say, but I loved this first one so much. Just the pacing, the characters, the pastoral nature of it. I loved the balance of like light and dark. It just really made me very nostalgic and it was so great. This is set in a world where humanity has basically been worshiping this other group called the Freya for generations. And humans view these individuals as God, which is logical. They live for a really long time, thousands of years. They seem to be invincible in battle, being faster and stronger and also possessing magical abilities. But at the beginning of this book, a human actually kills one of these Freya, kind of upending the political situation. And now there's kind of a conflict brewing. And it's important to note, these are not gods. It's just a strong, pompous group of individuals who have been kind of preying on humans for a very long time. The first book was amazing. I loved the escalation of the plot. We follow the god killer himself, as well as a few other characters. Primarily, this book takes place in like a small human village, and I just loved it, okay? So I did this book from the library, but once I finished it, I knew I needed to add it to my shelf. So I bought book one for a fantastic price, like $8, sent directly to my door. We love it. So this is the next book I grabbed. This particular book shouldn't be a shocking revelation, but with the purchase of Age of Myth, I also wanted to go ahead. Oh my gosh, this is like new. Did anyone even read this book? What? I also bought Age of Swords by Michael J. Sullivan, which is book 2 to the Legends of the First Empire series. I'm going to be jumping into this right away. Honestly, I want to read it right now. Completely upending my TBR. Like, that's how much I've enjoyed just the reading experience of this world. I'll be getting to this soon. I'm curious to see how things are going to escalate. The end of book 1 was honestly like pretty explosive, opening the door for more things to kind of evolve in the second installment. I think this series is like 5 or 6 books, so I'm really looking forward to this, and I truly cannot wait. So I also grabbed book 2. Next up, I have 2 stunning limited edition indie releases. I worked with Wraithmark Creative in a previous video for the limited edition of The Sword of Kaigen, and they sent me 2 of their other books that they had done previously, and they are stunning. The first is A Mark of Kings, and this is like a leather-bound gold leaf book. I mean, this is absolutely incredible, and there's like illustrations on the inside. So I'm really excited to have this. Truthfully, I had never even heard of this book, but reading online, the reviews are so positive. The setup is very, very classic. We're following our main character, Declan, and his horse companion, and he's basically been a mercenary for the past decade, shifting from job to job and mercenary group. At the beginning of this book, a new contract kind of goes awry, and he finds himself sort of thrust into a war that seemingly is pulled directly from legends, like soldiers raising themselves from the dead. And now we follow Declan as he kind of chooses what fate he wants to find himself. I'm sure he's going to be the hero for the ages if you get my meaning. I'm curious about this. Again, the reviews are so positive, and now that I have this stunning edition, I can't wait for the reading experience of this. And the second book I received honestly sounds incredible and right up my alley, and that is Mother of Learning. This has one of my favorite genre combination, which is fantasy and thriller. This follows our main character Zorian, a teenage mage from humble beginnings who has slightly above average skill, and he is just about to begin his 3rd year at a magical academy. Zorian himself is very focused. He wants to kind of grow and become the best mage possible, and also work to escape the family burden of expectations, especially because all of his brothers are favored ahead of him. Unfortunately, though, at the beginning of the semester, Zorian is killed, then abruptly brought back to life and finds himself at the beginning of the month, right when he's boarding the train to go to school, finding himself trapped in a time loop repeating over and over and over again until he can unravel the mystery in front of him. This just sounds so interesting. First off, I love magical academies. I love any type of magic school setting. And the fact that this kind of has a murder mystery, almost dark academia element to it really, really intrigues me. This edition is also stunning, so I'm thrilled to add this to my shelf. All right, let's get to opening some of these packages. I feel like I have been saving some of these for what feels like weeks and weeks and weeks. Too long. Alrighty, so the first book I have here is Ithaca by Claire North. I love Claire North. I have read both of her previous releases, the first one being The First 15 Lives of Harry August, and then The Sudden Appearance of Hope. Both of them are kind of thrilling, fast-paced sort of mystery stories that also combine an unusual magical quality to them. So when I saw that she was releasing a new book, it immediately went on my radar, but specifically I'm very intrigued by this because it is a bit of a genre shift in terms of what I've read from her. Again, in the past I've read kind of fantasy-leaning thriller mystery stories, but this is kind of a reimagining and humanization of a very famous classic Greek figure, and that is Penelope. And I'm really intrigued to check out a different genre by this author, as I already know I love her writing. So in this story, we follow our main character Penelope, who married King Odysseus right when she came of age. And famously, we also know that King Odysseus sails away from the Isle of Ithaca 17 years prior to the start of this novel with every man of fighting age to fight in the Trojan War. We also know that after the end of this conflict, this particular man also goes on his own odyssey. Obviously, when King Odysseus was there, Penelope's position was very, very secure. But as rumors and speculation begin to spread about the whereabouts of her husband, suitors begin to bang down the door. Honestly, this sounds really, really interesting. I have read the Odyssey, and obviously I've really engaged with the story from King Odysseus's point of view, and what happens to Penelope and her being overrun by suitors in her home is almost treated like comedic relief or a punchline. So I'm really curious to engage with the story from a different point of view, not just Penelope's, but like a fresh take on this tale. It has really strong reviews so far, so I'm curious about this, and I feel like this could be a beautiful story, and I'm excited to pick it up. Next book I grabbed, I'm honestly still a little surprised about it, and that is Fairy Tale by Stephen King. I have never read a Stephen King novel. I've never even really been called out to read a Stephen King novel. I don't read a lot of horror, so a lot of his famous works just are too scary for me. But this is Stephen King's newest release, and it seems very much up my alley, and I've actually gotten quite a few comments from you guys letting me know that you think I might like this book. So I thought, you know, maybe I'll read a Stephen King novel and I can vlog it and whatnot. Critics are saying this is one of Stephen King's most whimsical, dark, and fantasy-leaning tales. Specifically, we're following a young boy, a 17-year-old main character who inherits a key that basically unlocks a parallel world. In this parallel world, like good versus evil have been in conflict for a long time, and I think we follow that main character as he sort of joins the fight. I'm really curious about this. Obviously, it's called fairy tale. I love fairy tales. Modern, old, any type. I'm generally speaking very interested in picking this up. So if this is Stephen King's version of a fairy tale, I'm curious about it. The back is also really intriguing. I feel like it's written from the perspective of our main character, and he's kind of writing down his own experience. And I love when there's a sort of retrospective element to a tale or experience. I don't know, maybe this is a Stephen King novel for me. There's only one way to find out, but I will say it did sell me. I'm curious. I also think the cover is really cool. This looks like an eye, but it's really like a spiral staircase going down. So 10 out of 10 points for cover design as well. All right, moving on to our next box. Oh yes, this is so exciting. Okay, this is one of my most anticipated releases, and I'm so happy to have it in my hands. And that is Amari and the Great Game by B.B. Alston. This is book 2, the first one being Amari and the Night Brothers, which is a fantastic middle grade series full of magic and adventure and an amazing main character. I loved the first one. It quickly became like one of my new favorite middle grade series to read. So I'm very curious to see how the world and the plot is going to continue to expand in book 2. In this story, we follow our main character Amari, and Amari has never stopped believing that her older brother is still alive, despite what everyone in her life is trying to tell her. One day, she is going through her brother's things and she discovers a very mysterious briefcase, and when she opens it, it has an invitation to try out for the Bureau of Supernatural Affairs. Feeling like this is a sign from her brother, she accepts the invitation and her world is completely changed. This bureau is absolutely fascinating. It's a really interesting combination of like magic school and bureaucracy, because it's training Amari and a lot of younger students, but also it employs a lot of adults who do a variety of jobs to basically protect the world from supernatural going-ons, from ghosts to creatures to magic and all different types of things. There's so much happening in this magical world, and I love learning about every single second of it. Amari herself is such a fantastic character. When she arrives at the school, realizes her brother is not dead but actually missing, and he was actually one of the top agents at this bureaucracy. So she decides that she is going to become an agent herself. She has to go through a bunch of trials and tribulations. She also has not had any training, unlike a lot of the kids who come from rich and magical families. So she is up against a lot. You see her basically learn and persevere, and it's absolutely fascinating. I loved the first one. I felt like it was such an amazing start to a new series. I'm curious to see where the plot is going to continue on in book 2. I'm not kidding. I'm obsessed with this. If you have not checked it out, I highly implore you to do so. The next book on my list was sent to me by the publisher, and that is The Luminaries by Susan Denard. I've read a few books by this author, but it's been quite a few years. But when I saw she was coming out with a new release, I was really intrigued by it. I like her writing, and I also hear the format of this book is really unique, and that I think she started kind of putting it together by crowdsourcing information, and it was kind of a community-built story, which sounds really cool. In the story, we follow our main character, Winnie, and Winnie dreams of joining an ancient order called the Luminaries that basically protects her town and the world every single night from monsters that rise up in the forest that surrounds where Winnie lives. To do this, she basically has to excel in a set of trials, but she's kind of been ostracized by the town itself after her father turns out to be a witch and a traitor, has been shunned. But on Winnie's 16th birthday, she has the opportunity to try to join up by again entering these trials. She quickly realizes that she's going to need help if she's going to find success. Enter in our other main character, Friday, the town's resident bad boy, but could also be Winnie's key to success, and they begin working together in these trials, and I'm sure some will they won't they will also appear. I'm curious about this book. Again, I already know I like the author's writing. I think the setup of this is generally something I really enjoy. Small town politics, magic, dark and mysterious forest full of magic. I feel like this could be a real winner, so I'm happy to add it to my shelf. Again, big shout out to Tor for sending this my way. Alrighty, next box to open up. I don't even know how to open this, to be honest. This is a big box for this one book, but another most anticipated release of the year. Thrilled to have this in my hands, and that is The World We Make by N.K. Jemisin. This, of course, is a sequel to The City We Became by the same author that came out a few years ago. One of my favorite books of the year when it was released. N.K. Jemisin is one of my favorite authors of all time. I love her writing. I love her world. I just think she has such a way with everything, to be honest. This series is an urban fantasy series that is just so unbelievably unique. The story itself is set in our world, but when cities kind of reach a certain amount of age or maturity, they actually become alive, and they personify usually in one single person. At the beginning of book 1, New York City is on the cusp of awakening into a person, but some sort of evil force disrupts this process, and instead of it being one person, each borough in the city is personified instead. From there, we're basically following all of these different points of views, and they start to work together to try to face against this very strange evil force that's infecting the city. It is just so clever and so thoughtfully put together. First off, I love all the characters so much, and the concept just absolutely shines. The evil force is also one that's very hard to sort of nail down. Again, it's an infection. Like, it definitely has these like epic fight moments, but it's also much more representative of like the societal ills and the division and all of the issues we have in our world kind of transformed in a monster. So seeing this concept translated to more of a fantasy situation, I thought was really, really interesting. But in book 2, we are back in New York City and the enemy is waking once more. I'm really curious to see how this is going to continue to evolve. I loved the first one, and I have a feeling I'm going to love book 2 just as much. And the last book I have to show off is Juniper and Thorne by Ava Reed. This was another recent pickup for me from a local bookstore, and reading over the synopsis, it really does feel like something I will love. I recently read a book by Ava Reed, and elements of it I really, really enjoyed. It didn't fully like work out for me in the end, but the writing and the concept were really strong, so I felt like I definitely wanted to check out more books by this author. And this particular story is a gothic horror retelling with steampunk elements. I mean, honestly, say no more. In the story, we follow our main character Marlinchin, and she and her two sisters live with their abusive wizard father in a city that's kind of transitioning from magic to industry. As some of the city's last remaining witches, they have kind of transformed into a tourist attraction. In the day, Marlinchin is just trying to work to create as much money as possible to appease her father. But in the nighttime though, she and her sisters actually sneak out to enjoy the city and what it has to offer. Specifically, they've just recently discovered a newly established ballet theater, and they quickly fall in love with not only ballet, there's also a dancer there that captures Marlinchin's heart. As her late night escapes begin to increase in frequency, so does the risk of sparking her father's rage. While the city is seemingly flourishing with magic and culture and history, there is a dark and dangerous monster kind of hiding underneath the surface. This book sounds really, really interesting. I love the setting, sort of industrial revolution meets magic setting, obviously it being a gothic horror retelling. I'm very intrigued by that. I already know I love this author's writing, so I'm hopeful that this plot will work out a bit better for me this time around. Hey guys, that is my huge unboxing book haul. Please let me know down below some books you've picked up recently, as I would love to know, and I will see you soon with another video soon. Goodbye!